Today's episode is brought to you by Musical Theater Radio's merch store. Looking for that perfect gift for someone or just want to treat yourself to some great musical theater themed merch? Head to musicaltheaterradio.com and click on the All Things Theater button on the homepage and check out all the different designs available. And now, today's interview. Welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. Today, we are going to be speaking to the writing team of Scott Logsdon and Aaron Gandy about their careers, how they met, their musicals, and whatever else happens to come to mind during the interview. So let's get things started and welcome Scott and Aaron to the show. Hello, guys.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, before we get into, talking about your shows and everything, we got to get to know you a little bit better. So I always ask for a 30-second bio. So, Scott, I'm going to start with you. Who is Scott in 30 seconds?
Scott is a Starbucks mug, Trader Joe's addict, and I used to be a performer. I worked on Broadway. And I enjoy writing, and I love musical theater.
Cool. That was quick. Nice and
30 seconds.
Aaron, can you top that? Who is Aaron in 30 seconds?
Oh, boy. I am a New York City-based music director, conductor, pianist, arranger, orchestrator, songwriter, record producer, concert producer, lots of many things, wear lots of hats, as many of us do. And I'm very happy to be working with Mr. Scott Logsdon on some incredible shows that we're putting together that, if you don't mind my saying, are incredible. Just fantastic stuff.
I don't mind you saying, so thank you. And I'm curious, do you always refer to him as Mr. Scott? I'd be curious, do you always have to call him that? Was that
you get your knuckles wrapped if you don't. With a ruler. Yeah.
Oh, did I forget to mention that I was a nun?
We missed that in your 30-second bio.
Okay.
So I'm curious. Now, Scott, I'm going to start with you on this one. Were you always into musical theater growing up, or is that something you discovered a little bit later in life?
I loved musicals when I was a kid. When The Sound of Music came out, I was obsessed with it. My poor mother had to drag me to it I don't know how many times. Mm-hmm. And I was slightly furious that they had cast the movie without me being Court Von Trapp, even though I was a little young. And then I wanted to be a movie star, as one does. And I was, how the heck am I going to be a movie star? And the only opportunities I had to develop my movie star potential was a summer theater that did Gilbert and Sullivan. And I was like, well, it's Gilbert and Sullivan. I don't really know what that is, but I've got to do something before, I'm on the cover of Rona Barrett's Hollywood. And then I fell in love with, singing and being on stage and found out I had a good voice. And that was the gateway. I guess we wouldn't call it a drug, but the gateway experience that sent me off into loving musical theater.
Nice. Aaron, same question. Always into musical theater, or is that something, a little bit later in life?
I was a band geek first, trumpet, then learned other instruments, including piano, and went to college first year as a trumpet performance major. And then switched over to musical theater and ended up getting a music theater degree, which at my university, which was Florida State, was a bachelor's of music, which was perfectly suited to actually what my interests were, which was not just singing, but all veins of music, whether that's instrumental or vocal, opera, anything. And I would say by, college, I had been bitten by the bug and have done it pretty exclusively since then, happily to say.
Nice. I'm always curious, going through school, high school, elementary school, etc. Was there anything else you thought you might go into, or were you driven to be in the arts, Scott? Like, was there something else that you thought, Oh, maybe I would be that as a career.
I kind of wanted to be a detective for a hot minute because I was really into Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, and I was
Okay.
became pen pals with the author. Uh, but then the idea of guns kind of freaked me out about that, and I thought about being a psychologist, but they're like, you have to learn German. And I'd
Mhm.
had a horrible German teacher in junior high school. And I was like, okay, that's never going to happen. So where else can I just be applauded and have people tell me I'm wonderful? Ah, theater. How little I knew.
Aaron, yourself?
uh, well, for a minute, I thought I was going to be a high school band director, and then I came to my senses. Um, but before that, I think my dream job, if you asked me in elementary school, was probably an architect. And I still have fantasies about designing buildings or fixing buildings that I encounter that ought to be better than they are. Very random, but
Oh, yeah.
yes.
I kind of wanted to be an architect too, but I was really bad at math, and that was the end of that.
Well, you've replaced buildings with musicals because that's what you are creating now. So it worked out.
Structure, yes, indeed. Structure. Still
Exactly.
there.
Structure, blueprints.
Yep.
So now I'm curious, how did the two parallel lines of Aaron and Scott finally intersect? How did that happen?
We worked together many years ago at a lovely theater company in North Carolina, doing a production of On the 20th Century, which was one of my favorite shows. And I played Bruce Granite, the Kevin Kline role. And Aaron and another gentleman and I shared an apartment, and we just met. Then we enjoyed each other. The show was not terrific, sadly. The director literally, because On the 20th Century is a farce.
Mm-hmm.
And he would look at the script and he'd be like, okay, page 32, Bruce enters. I guess you come in the door. Flip, flip, flip. On page 33, you exit. So I guess you go back out the door. So we were all filling in the blanks. And even though the show itself was not spectacular, we had a spectacular summer. Everyone was great. We had 70s disco theme parties. It was quite fun. And then we stayed in touch.
Is that how you remember it, Aaron?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, it's fantastic. I was in the band, wasn't I? Was I in the cast?
No.
I think that summer I was
you
in
were
the
in the cast. You were one of the you
that's
you were
right.
one of tap dancing porters in that horrible Life is Like a Train number that I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Compton and Green, you wrote some genius stuff. That is not one of the genius numbers.
Now I know why I didn't remember that, because I blocked it out. Me tap dancing? Come on. No. But I remember being at the piano more than anything that summer, which is why I asked that question, because I think I was hired as a singer, but wish I was in the orchestra.
So the two of you met as performers, but how did you decide to start working together as a writing?
We've stayed in touch. We've stayed in touch over the years, and like 9 years ago, I think, Aaron had reached out and said, "Oh, I'm doing this Broadway Pops concert. Would you like to be?" And I was like, "Yeah, terrific, great, whatever." Just thinking, it would be like a nice little sing. And then he called me and said, "Oh, how do you feel about your co-stars being Howard McGillen and Liz Calloway?" And I was like, okay, I need to go lie down for a while because that's a little overwhelming. And so we did a handful of those concerts and just sort of started conversing back and forth on a much more regular basis. And with Dana Rowe, who wrote The Witches of Eastwick and The Fix that were produced in London, I had written a show, a spoof of, we're not supposed to say spoof, an homage to Hallmark Christmas movies. And Aaron sat in on the Zoom read we did with Carrie Butler and Andy Carl and Ann Harada. kind of being my editor, because I write well, I don't type well. And when I look at something I've written, I see what was in my head and not what's on the page. So this is a very long-winded answer. So Aaron was sitting in and doing that. And then shortly after that, there was an episode of the TV show Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, where Rebecca, the lead character, sang a 60s girl group song about how much she hated her mother. And I was so intrigued by the contrast between these horrifyingly dark lyrics and the relentless perkiness of the 60s girl group music that I thought, I wonder if that could be a fun show. So I wrote a song inspired by Be My Baby. Was that the Ronettes, I think? And the gist of the song is the high school girl seeing the cute guy, and she dreams that he's going to say, I'm your baby. And then the cute boy walks up and says, I'm your baby. And then they get married, and years later, a guy knocks on the door and walks in and looks at her husband and says, I'm your baby, because her husband had had an affair on her. And I thought it was funny. As you can tell, my sense of humor may not always land with everyone. So I sent Aaron the lyric and said, what do you think about this? And 3 hours later, he had said it and had sent it back to me. I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. And it just kind of blossomed from there.
Nice. And thus the Crinolyns was born.
Indeed.
Yes.
So tell us about that show. You know, we heard a little bit how it was birthed, but tell us a little bit about the show and the production history and things like that.
Aaron?
Well, with the success of that one song, we both said, hey, we're onto something here. And then Scott brilliantly put together this notion of a show of these three sisters who had once been had a brush with fame when they were a part of a sister act. And the idea is that years later, they are going to get back together and sing some of their old hits, sure, but more interestingly, sing about what life turned out to be and how different that was than the rose-colored glasses that all the songs they had been part of that genre promised. So those songs all seem to promise that, all you need to do is marry the football quarterback and get his varsity sweater, and your life's done. You're perfect. You can just, kick your heels back. And of course, life never turns out that way. And the richness of the lives that these three women ultimately went on to lead became wonderful mind that we dug through and found all these fantastic musical moments, largely due to Scott's wickedly brilliant mind with lyrics. Particularly, he has a habit, a real skill at figuring out where the song falls in a particular moment that can then be expanded deliciously into 3.5 minutes or whatever the song needs. And so it was a matter of him saying, what about a song about this? And how about a song about that? And what about this? And we batted them back around plenty of times. And the next thing you know, we had 19 songs, 18?
Oh no, we had like 32 songs that we
oh my gosh.
whittled down to 21, and then I think we're at 19 songs now. And
yeah,
to hijack it, and Aaron, literally, you can say, write a song that is reminiscent of this, but doesn't sound like, some crappy pastiche version, and he brings it. And when it was kind of bass backwards, shall we say, way of writing, because usually, when you write a musical, going back to the architecture tie-in, you have your framework, and this is point A, and we're going to end wherever we end up. Whereas with this, we just wrote songs because I'd say, hey, I think we need to do a song kind of like Going to the Courthouse. But because they're older and wiser, it's going to be about the fact that the one sister has been divorced 32 times. So we were trying to find songs that you would know what the template, what the original was, but finding a fun way to spin it. And I had the great good fortune to hang out with Jerry Herman a bit when I was working in Palm Springs, and we knew a million people in common. And we just talked, and he said that one of the things that he thought was the most important was something that Frank Lesser taught him, which is that he called it the caboose. Lesser called it the caboose. That there's a twist at the end of the song, because a theater song should be moving the narrative along. Mm-hmm. Oh, rhyme. So you always want that twist. So again, I would think of a song and then go, okay, so what can the twist be that it's not just, I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love, and I'm in love. We always want to find some twist, something unexpected. And there was a song, well, there is a song called Mr. Locksmith, which was inspired by Oh, Mr. Postman. And I was writing it, I was just kind of like, this is kind of inane. And what is the point of this? And then all of a sudden, the thought clicked into my head that what if, because she's singing about she wants somebody to have a key to her heart, and what if that became a metaphor for a certain part of the male anatomy, that a young girl would not be thinking that that's what it meant. And there was also a moment in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I'm rambling, where Willow, when they're in college, is talking, and she's like, and there are new thoughts that are just thrusting into my head and spurting the knowledge. It's just like, oh, that ended someplace where I didn't think it was going to. Yeah. So, I came up with a line about the guy trying to use his key on the back door, and I was like, this is too much. And we laughed and thought, no. And when we did the first reading we were like, okay, we will know if this kills the show, and the audience could not get enough of it. So that was a very long-winded journey with many off-ramps.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with a journey or a travel song. So,
and we based the girls. Sorry, that was the whole point. Sorry, now I'm so Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice going off on the tangents. So we wrote the songs, and then it was sort of like, well, who are these people singing it? And then we're like, well, girl groups who are sisters are interesting, because then you have the built-in tension from any familial dynamic. And the Golden Girls 40 years later is still shown 24/7 all over the world. Mm-hmm. So we based the three women basically on the three younger Golden Girls. You have Anne, who is the lead singer, who is very optimistic, like Rose. And then you have Maddie, who is the acerbic B. Arthur, Dorothy Zbornak-like character. And then you have Roz, who is the Blanche Devereaux good time girl who has never met a key she didn't like.
I'd love to hear the production history of it. So when did it start, and what's the journey of it to this point so far?
Okay, we started writing. Okay, we started writing late summer of 21, and we had finished the first draft by January, and then theater, probably about an hour from where I am, the new executive director had been in productions of Sweeney Todd and Chess in Concert that I had directed. And I read on Facebook that they were doing a reading of this new show. So I reached out and said, hey, I have this show, Golden Girls Meets Forever Plaid, all new pop score. We would love to do a reading. And he was like, great. And 3 months later, we did our first reading, which again, just landed better than any first reading should ever have a right to. There were a couple songs that, one that we very much loved, and a couple that didn't quite hit the mark with the rest, that were taken out, and then we, worked on shuffling and reshaping. And then someone who runs a theater where I did a concert had said, oh, we want to do a concert version of this. And I reached out to some famous gals, Sally Mays and Valerie Wright. And through Valerie, we got Donald Champlin from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And then that producer kind of pulled the plug, and I was like, so we quickly called the place that had done the reading, and we did a concert presentation of the show with newly done orchestrations, and we sold like 75%, which for a brand new show that no one has ever heard from in the middle of nowhere. It was a very optimism-inspiring thing. And again, the show plays like gangbusters, and we had all these little women come. A friend of mine was in line to get the tickets, and the woman in front of her said, may I pick up my friend's ticket? I'm only 78, she's 90, she didn't want to stand on line. And the minute the first double entendre in the key song happened, oh, those women were ahead of the jokes. They were screaming and laughing, and so that's sort of where we are. And we've been hoping to do a concert version in New York. The ladies that we have talked to have expressed interest. We've just not been able to line up schedules, but hopefully that will be in the future.
Nice. Well, congratulations on the show. It sounds fantastic.
Thank you.
Aaron,
and to any producer. Oh, sorry. And to any producers listening, it's very cheap. It's 3 women, a 4-piece band, and no set. Go, Aaron.
You got to get that plug in. Totally. I get it. Aaron, I'd love to know, when I'm talking to writing teams, I'm always curious how it works with them. Is it music first? Is it lyrics first? Is it a combination? How does it work with you guys?
Typically, Scott is so fast with putting structures together. He should have been an architect. He will build the most delicious and watertight piece dramatically you can imagine. And as he works, he will flag certain moments. This is the song. I think this is what this should be about, this kind of thing. Then he puts those ideas to me, and I respond to them, and he incorporates those responses into further work that he does. And eventually he will come up with a first lyric, and he will bounce it my way. And by the time it's gotten to that point, I already know the scene, the characters, the beat, the flavor, the energy the moment requires. I already, in my head, know what the orchestration is going to sound like. I already have been, it's almost like I've been writing it with him alongside of him, but I really haven't begun. But I have, in some ways, begun mapping out what the song should be, so that by the time he actually delivers the first lyric, often I know what I'm going to do. So it's a matter of just sitting down at the piano, or sometimes I'm walking down the street. It just sort of comes to me, and I figure out what it needs to be. And I call him, that night, or, within 24 hours, and say, I think I got something. And I share. And if I'm in the ballpark, we go forward. And if I'm not, he goes, oh, no, it's not this, it's that. I course correct, and we pivot, and we just go from there. But it tends to be a long, slow process, and then it's very fast. Mm-hmm. The long, slow part is Scott's mind figuring out exactly where to take the battleship, and you got to steer this thing in many different ways, and so many things to account for when you're putting together a theater score. But by the time it gets to me, a lot of those questions have been answered collectively between the two of us. And then, like I said, I can pretty much already sort of know what kind of songs come on my way. Oh, he's going to send me a bossa nova. I already know that. You know what I'm saying? Just as an example. And so then I've already been thinking about bossa nova for the last 4 weeks. By the time he actually sends me the lyric, I know what I'm doing with it, and I can bounce it back very quickly. So it's a thrilling process.
Very cool.
And one of the great things that I love about our collaboration is that we are just bluntly honest with each other. Mm-hmm. Because I'll write a lyric, I'll be like, oh, this is so great, I'm so excited. And he'll be like, I don't feel it. And I'll be like, okay. And, it gets put away, or, he'll send me something. I'll just be like, no, I'm sorry. And it's like, all right. And then we talk, and, we figure out a new approach to whatever we need to do. And I mean, he writes, and, Aaron, hold your head with your hands, because I don't want it expanding. He is so melodically gifted, and he writes the most amazing earworms. And, I mean, there's room for all kinds of musical theater. I myself happen to like musical theater. Sorry, Sondheim. And I love his stuff, but I mean, the whole thing about hummable. It doesn't have to be hummable, but it has to be a song. And if you look at shows that are selling, they're ones that have melodies. And that's so Aaron is so spectacular at that. And, I'll send him a lyric, he'll send me, a version back, and I'll listen and go, okay, that word doesn't quite sing well. How can I tweak that? And because ultimately what we want is for the song to be seamless, where you can't tell where the words end and the music begins, that it's all just part and parcel and one complete whole.
I'd love to talk about Romeo and Juliet. I love the concept and the idea, and so I'd love for you to tell us, more about it. Again, it's how it became to be.
Straight from the evil mind of Mr. Scott Logsdon. It's wickedly bent.
Here's where we have like our Oprah moment. I had cancer some years back, and fought it, did the chemo, went into remission, which is still holding, thank God, years later. But it really made me so super aware of time. And since I was given the gift of this extension, I just don't feel comfortable wasting the time. And so after we did the concert of Crinolynns, and we're like, okay, this show is great. And we were about 60% of the way through a sequel to the Crinolynns called A Crinolynns Christmas. I was just sort of going through my head of things that I thought of. As I mentioned, I'm the world's worst typist. And I had written an email to a friend, oh God, like 10 years ago, where I was talking about Romeo and Juliet, because he was working on it. And I typed Romero by mistake. And he was like, spell check. And I looked at it, and this was an Aaron, and I was like, Romero? Oh my God, that's kind of funny. George Romero wrote Night of the Living Dead, ha ha ha. And it was kind of in the file cabinet in the back of my head. So after we did the concert at the Crinolynns, and I was trying to think of something new, at first I was like, maybe I'll just write a screenplay about, Romero and Juliet. But I was like, no, that's so camp and so Little Shop and twisted. And, so I messaged Aaron, was like, hey, what do you think about this idea? And he was like, oh my God, I love it. And so in a nutshell, the show is Romeo and Juliet set in 1985. He is a distant relative, Romero, the leading man, of George Romero, who was the director of the classic zombie movie Night of the Living Dead. And Juliet is a zombie, and zombies hate the Romeros because Romero let the world know that they existed. And because it's the 80s, they meet at a concert called Deadstock, which is being headlined by a Madonna-like character named Notre Dame, and love and lots of death ensue.
So musically, Aaron, I think you've got a bit of a switch from the Crinolynns to this.
Yes.
How did that work for you? And do you love writing? Are you a big fan of the 80s music?
Oh, I'm an 80s kid for sure. So as soon as he said, what if it was an 80s score, I lit up because I fall out of bed knowing that genre. I just know it so very well. I grew up on that stuff. And we started mapping out how the score might support the story, where it has like was part of the synth pop 80s vibe, where it might be a little more Bryan Adams, a little more acoustic-y, and what elements would support what in the score. And I just got so excited about the possibilities. And Scott, what was the first song we wrote for that show? Do you remember? That I wrote. I mean, you wrote many before I got to setting music, but what was it? Was it Love Bites?
No, I think it was Come Out of the Shadows.
Oh, okay. Come out of the, okay. Well, that's fabulous. Anyway, it was a matter of, again, we had already settled on what specific inspirations might be at play in a number, And by the time he sent me the lyric, I was pretty much already halfway on my way to actually being able to come up with something. And so, because I've been cogitating in my mind basically the whole time he had been building it on his end. So again, it wrote itself pretty fast, and it's thrilling, and it's very synth pop 80s glam hair band. There's all that in there. It's fabulous.
Nice. I'm always curious, and it doesn't just have to be this show, but any of the shows you've written. Was there a song that was just so easy that it just flowed out of you? And was there one that just drove you insane and you had such a difficult time, getting it just completed?
I mean, there have been songs where we've gone through, I'm not kidding, like 7 or 8, versions before we found it. And really what it comes down to is tying back to what I said earlier, is the fact that we don't put ego in front of anything. It has to be like, what is serving the story? Because ultimately what I love about musical theater is you're using music to tell a story. And so many people are writing musicals who don't know anything about musicals, but they've had a hit record or whatever. And the lyrics are inane. And after 8 measures, I'm looking at my watch going, oh my God, how do I fast forward through this? Because you're not telling me anything.
Yeah.
So there have been songs, that, and again, we'll toss them out. We wrote a song for the CRINOLYNNS that we loved, but it didn't advance the story. And we went, well, this will come of, the trunk someday, but you've got to just be focused on what is best, and the best idea, best melody, whatever wins.
Yeah. Well said. It's a piece of theater, first and foremost. And so if it doesn't answer itself and earn its place theatrically, you can feel like you're just sort of treading water in a show, and a show can never sustain that, or else it just gets flabby. So I think we're pretty ruthless about, giving each other our honest take on, I like this, but does it work? Is it thrilling? Is it exciting? Does it feel like the right song at the right moment in this act? That's another question. Are we ready for a ballad? I don't know. You know what I mean? Have we just had a number that felt like that? Variety in a score is so important to both of us. And making sure each moment is earned and feels satisfying when it arrives, and that you're glad it came. You know what I mean? We've all sat through shows where you're like, oh, here comes another song. Mm-hmm. And you're not very excited about it because you've already been dining on that buffet, for the last, 45 minutes, and the score is just more of the same, or it seems random and somehow unassociated with the storytelling. Mm-hmm. So one of our goals is to always make sure that the score really is driving in the same direction as the drama and supporting it beautifully.
We don't want to have a score that's comprised of genies packing up from Brigadoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you're kind of like, okay, that's there, next. And for example, we just wrote a song in Romeo and Juliet because sort of at the top of Act 2, and Juliet and Romeo have consummated their relationship. And, I wrote this lyric that I really liked, and I wrote it, and I sent it to Aaron. He's like, oh, and he wrote the most gobsmackingly amazing, pitch perfect 80s, beautiful, earwormy song. And I loved it. And I try to walk every day, and I listen, to whatever I'm working on as I walk. Mm. And I said, you know what? This is a great song. Don't hate me. It sounds too old for the character. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of like, what? It's a great song. I was like, I know it's a great song, but she's 16. She's a zombie. She just got boinked. And the insight that she's having is a little too mature for where she would be. Mm-hmm. And then we went through like 4 or 5 other lyrics before we finally got to the point where it worked. And then we were like, oh, and this is it. And that's the exciting thing, is when you go through all those detours, when you finally get where you're going, it's very gratifying that you have found the right way.
Yeah.
Yes.
So where is Romeo and Juliet on its production life cycle?
We did a Zoom table read earlier this year just to make sure the script read before we really, locked in doing it, and we're almost completely finished with it. I think we have 2 more songs to write. And, you know, we're getting interest. It's been gratifying because we've sent demos out on Friday the 13th, which is the day the show takes place. And then for Halloween, and we've gotten some nibbles, and nothing is set, but we're very optimistic. Again, we used Little Shop as a template. It's a cast of 9. And, you know, it's funny, it's heartfelt, it's scary. The script has variations from Romeo and Juliet. I mean, it's basically the story, but there are twists and turns so that it's not like just, oh God, here's Romeo and Juliet, you know, drop in song here. No, there are definite twists. So we're really excited about it and hoping that people will look at it and go, ooh, this would be a fun show to do every year for Halloween, or, you know, for our college or wherever.
Nice. Well, if people are interested in putting on either of these, how do people get to know you? The websites, the socials, etc.
We always have, you know, contact info on demos that we send out. And one of the lovely things on your sample platter that you have, you know, is the contact information. So if anyone is interested, you know, please reach out. Crinolynns, we thought we were going to get produced last year. We were like at the 11th hour of negotiations with a company, and it kind of mysteriously fell apart, which was heartbreaking and puzzling. And then sadly, like a few months later, we read that the theater was going under, which we didn't know at the time. But, you know, we want shows that people love and that will be produced and that have roles for a vast array of different types.
Cool. Is there anything that the two of you want to plug that you're working on, that not necessarily together or anything like that, or you are working on something new that you want to plug?
I mean, Crinolynns, you know, as I said, it just seems a no-brainer to me. You know, every theater has older women, and you know, one of the unfortunate things about sort of the way musical theater, you know, developed or veered off was it used to be about celebrating women of a certain age, and not so much anymore. And you know, so the Crinolynns has 3 juicy roles for older women. Oh, and we have 2 versions. We have the A version. The reunion is 40 years after their hit, so they're in their 60s, early 60s. And then we have a version with tweaked book and lyrics where it's the 50th anniversary where they can be in their 70s. And, you know, again, a small cast, no set, because they're playing, you know, a little nondescript venue in Branson, Missouri. And it takes place in 1999, so it's a period piece. And Romero and the Crinolynns Christmas. And Aaron, I know, is working on a project with Noah Racy that he might want to talk about.
Yeah, it's called this show called Samantha Single-Handed, and it is an old-fashioned dance show. I love dance, and a lot of the shows I've done as music director have been for dancing companies, and I just love the thrill of dance, and I don't get me wrong, love good singing, need good singing. But when a show effectively incorporates thrilling dance as well, with actual dancers, I find it thrilling. And he and I are working on a show that we think lifts that part of the Broadway tradition forward, and I'm very excited about it. And aside from that, I'm focused on getting Romero and Juliet finished. As Scott said, we've got 2 songs to finish. And with luck, we will get it up somewhere in 2025, and alongside the Crinolynns, which I'm so excited about. All these projects. It's just a thrill and an honor to be working with talented writers, and hopefully that's going to yield some fun listening for your audiences, Jean Paul.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to the both of you. That's fantastic. I love your work. Like I said, I added to the sampler platter, so I know they sound great. And yeah, I'm looking forward to 2025. If you do get some productions, you let us know. We'll promote the heck out of it
Oh, we will.
help people,
Sure
get
thing.
their butts and seats.
And there's you will be the first to know, because again, I've been going crazy, going, I need to be working on something. And so I came up with an idea for a show, and Aaron, didn't kick me to the curb. And again, it's on the back burner till we get, Romero finished. But it's a new show. Originally, it was going to be called Senior Musical, but that sounded like Cocoon. And so now it's tentatively titled Return of the Musical. And it's about a high school where they haven't had a musical for several years. And a guy who went to the high school years before has come back to deal with family things and is going to direct a musical. And the kids are excited because they want to do like Spring Awakening or Rent. And he chooses Colorado, which is an homage to Oklahoma. And they're not terribly happy. And so it's about all the drama that goes on off stage during a high school musical as well as on stage. And it will have a show within the show. You have Colorado, where, yes, they spell out the title at the end of the number. And you have an Ethel Merman belt song and a trio reminiscent of Sing for Your Supper. And again, something that could be produced by high schools. And I will say, I've written several shows about teenagers. It's always fun because their emotions are so big. And if you're going to have somebody singing, there's got to be emotion, because otherwise it's just oral wallpaper. And so I've been having a great deal of fun working on that while Aaron is finishing up some of the Romero songs. And I had finished one like a month ago, and I was like, if you don't let me send this to you, I'm going to blow up into a million pieces. And I said,
and they were fantastic. I cannot wait to get around to writing those, and that's going to be a fun project.
Well, it looks like we're going to be having the two of you on again in another year once this gets
happily
up and talking about it. So,
Sure thing.
Jean-Paul, how did you get this idea to do what you do and help musical theater writers? I'm going to interview you and turn it. Maybe you've talked about it in other episodes, but like how did you get the idea to do what you do, which is so needed and so admirable and greatly appreciated?
Well, the Reader's Digest version, which means nothing to anybody under 30, of how this was, I went to school for musical theater performance, so it's actor, singer, dancer, did that, got out of the business for a bit, started another company, which wasn't working. So when something isn't working, you pivot, and then I pivoted again, and I pivoted again, and I pivoted again. And when you pivot 4 times, you're kind of facing the same direction. So I said, I'm not happy. I'm not making money. Let's just cut this. So I quit that business, and I was like, what am I going to do now? Then I looked in my room. I was like, I have all these CDs. I have all these LPs and tapes of musicals. Why not start a radio station like any sane person would think? So I did. And after that, I wanted to be like Sirius XM's on Broadway or iHeartRadio's Broadway, but I realized, I don't have, the giant company backing me, and I don't have the giant listenership, and they only play, like, no offense to them, but they only play like the 50 top musicals, right? And you hear that. Well, I want to hear what I wanted to hear, what other people probably want to hear. I want to hear something new, something old, something popular, something rare. But I also wanted to give back. So I made sure our mandate was to help support and promote new works, because, the classics of today are you guys, right? These shows that I'm talking to now in 10 years will be these, these Oklahomas, these Hamiltons, these Rents, etc. And I want to give a boost now, if I can. So I kind of want to do that. And, nobody did that when I was writing 20 years ago. So let's do what I can. So that's it in a nutshell. I just wanted to help people and see what I can do.
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. And again, I've said it earlier, but thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, it's really so tremendous. And, you're providing such invaluable things to listeners and to writers and creators. So I hope everyone is as appreciative to you as they should be.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, Aaron, Scott, I hate talking about myself. It's the one thing I don't like doing. That's why I do the interviewing. But Scott, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on today. It's great to, get to know the two of you, and getting to know the people behind the shows makes such a difference, and it explains, where they are and why they are. And yeah, anything I can do to help along the way, just let me know, and I'll take all my resources and throw it behind it.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. So we were just speaking with Aaron and Scott, the creators of Romeo and Juliet, the Crinolynns, and whatever else comes out in the future. I look forward to learning more about them and their shows. Tune in next week as we speak another guest or a guest about their life, love, and passion. That is musical theater. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Jovanoff. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.